Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this call. So, our trading study, what we do on the morning, 8 o'clock, we trade live for our members. Okay, well, I trade live for our members, and it's just me getting on the charts, basically. And when I'm trading, I'll jump into our Discord and our trading study, and people join me, and so on and so forth. Now, well, I tend to normally record my calls on the morning, and we had a lovely day today, loads of value. Some nice trades, and I didn't click record, so unfortunately I've now got to do a overview, a recap recording, and that's what this is today. But on the plus side is we can use the replay tool and stuff like that. But what I'll do to show you that it's not just a blag or whatever, because there's a lot of blags out there, I'll show you my MT4. I'll show you where we placed the sell stop and where we got in, got activated, and took partial move to break even, all that good stuff. So I'll show you all. I'll show you my MT4 on my live account, so you know we're all transparent and all that good stuff. So let's get into it. So as you know, every time we look to trade, we do a top-down analysis. Okay, so top-down analysis is going to give us the general bias and the overall picture of the markets for that day. Okay, so we do these before we even look for any setups, right? So let's go straight into it and let's do the top-down analysis. Now, we start off with the monthly, okay? But the monthly was bullish the previous month and didn't have a top wick. So we know that. We know price can come back up. However, we know price can also come back and test the previous wick on the previous monthly candle. We know that also. But what we had to do is flip down to the weekly, right? And the weekly, now what I've done is I've put the replay back on this so I can sort of explain for you. So this is what we sort of looked at the start of this week. We know the weekly had closed respecting this area. And the next weekly range was there, okay? So as you can see, price comes down, taps straight back up, taps back down, back up, and then comes through eventually, okay? So this was a weekly zone. Now, also what we identified is, if you look at this weekly here, the next weekly closed doji, and then the following week just drove down, tapping 1916 areas. So that's what we were sort of expecting on this weekly candle, because we closed respecting, then we closed doji, a bit like this one. So we were expecting this weekly then to drive all the way down, tap in 1916, okay? Now it didn't do that, but it still closed bearish, right? Now what we noticed is we closed bearish below this little minor support. So we were pretty confident that all we were going to get now, the weekly would open up, tap previous support, then flip to the downside to start driving towards that area. We were pretty confident that we're heavily bearish on the weekly. Okay, so at the moment we're only looking for sells at the moment. Okay, now if I get rid of this, obviously this is last week's, it's pre-recorded. Sorry, this is a replay. There's a little tool on TradingView. So if I go to the next candle, that's what we're getting now. That's what we see now. So this is actual data. You can see price moving up and down. Actual data. Look what this weekly's done. It's pulled back, tested previous support, then flipped to the downside to go to the downside. And this is where we caught our trade in this, which I want to go down in detail and explain in detail. So that's the weekly analysis. We are heavily bearish and we should be tapping 1917 this week. Okay. Now, what I really want to see on gold, I want this to close below here. Because if you close below here on the weekly, look at this range. The next weekly range is at least down in these levels. So you got a huge range here coming down. So ideally, that's what I want to see. If we get that on Friday, we get a close like that on Friday, next week should be very, very bearish. So it should be a really exciting week for us. So I'm sure we'll all catch some pips here at Relentless. So that is the weekly time frame. Let's drop down to the daily time frame. So daily time frame, where are we at now? Where were we at? This morning we woke up to, let me get rid of these. Get rid of this one. So what we noticed is the daily has closed below these levels. This daily broke and closed below this. Now where's the next daily range? Okay, so the next daily range is down in these levels. And you can see price closes below and pushes through to these levels, right? Now, if you weren't happy with these levels, you do also have, you can see loads of wicks in this area here. So you could even argue and say, okay, well, our support's here. We could use that as support, right? Now, obviously, we're going into New York session now. This morning, when we got on the charts for London, this daily candle was actually up here, like that, right? And this is where we caught ourselves from, up here for this daily. It's pulled back, tested previous support, and now it should be flipping to the downside to fill the rest of the range. But we do have to be careful because there's not much range left to go. Okay, we've only got this unless we do push to this other support. So you could argue and say this is a support, or you could say this is the daily range. It's completely down to yourself in regards to your analysis. Okay, so again, we're heavily bearish on the daily. Now, going into, that's the top down with heavily bearish. When we came onto the charts this morning, we had this big pullback on the daily, tapping previous support. We already had it. So it was just a case of finding a lower time frame breaks to the low in here to give us confirmation that this daily candle is now done its push up. It's now starting to flip to the downside. Once we had that, we were in there ready to pull all the way down for this daily then to then flip and fill to the rest of the range. Okay, so now we've done our top down. We know what we need to do. Yeah, then we go into looking for setups. So we know when we go down to lower time frames, we're looking for sells. We just want lower time frames, break into the lower zones, and then we can take our sell opportunities from there. Okay, so that was the top down we've got. So let me go into how and where we got our trades on TNS this morning. Okay, so we're happy with our daily bias. We know what direction we want our trades to be in, which is sells. Now, what we have to do is identify some zones. What does price do when it breaks a certain area? Where does it go to? And that's what we have to identify. Now, when we came onto the charts, I get on about 7 o'clock, so the close of this candle. This candle had closed bearish, okay? Also, we noticed that it closed respecting this area. So it didn't break above, and then we had a bearish close. Okay, so I was sort of happy that, depending on the next candle, we should be pushing back down, because also this would be the 4 hour creating a steeper bottom wick. Obviously, this is a replay, so this wasn't like this at this point. Price was still up here. Okay. So we come onto the market, we've seen this, we've seen that we're struggling to break the highs and we're respecting 1931, right? The next hour, we waited another hour and closed bullish, but again, we were sort of respecting this area. We came to touch it, but we didn't break back above. So what we're expecting is the next hour should drive to the downside. We were aware of this, okay? Now, also what I noticed is, if I get rid of this, we just look at previous data and we identify zones, right? So let's say we've identified this zone, okay? Every time you get a break to the low here, where does price go? Well, what we identified is if we got an hour break to the low of this area, so let's say we got this, probably 90% of the time, price comes and taps 1925. 90% of the time from previous data. And I'll go over this, I'll show you what I mean. So if we know that 90% of the time, when we get a close in that area, you tap 1925, the odds are in our favour, and that's what it is with trading. It's the probability game. It's not about knowing, it's just probability. What does previous data show you? Okay, so what we've done is we wanted to see, okay, if we get an hour close below here, what does price do? So this is where we go back previous data. So we're looking to the downside, right? Now this would be our target, 1925, right? I'll explain what this is shortly. So price came straight through this area here, straight through, and I'll mark it up in green so you can all see, right? Straight through, okay? Price comes up, taps, and then comes straight back through. Noticed? Yeah, now we want the ones from the top, but still, this is still relevant because, you know, when you struggle to break the highs, What does price do from here? Well, we know that price taps these areas. Okay, and that's what we can see happening. As soon as price comes up, comes straight back down. Okay, same again, straight back down, taps 1925, straight through with this hourly candle, straight through. Even these ones here, so if you look, there's the hour close. Yeah, next candle didn't do it, closed bullish, but the next candle, even this tapped 1925. Same again, this broke below, next candle drove, tap before reversing to the upside. So you get the gist, okay? 90% of the time, well at the minute 100% of the time, we know price flies through that area and pushes to the downside and pushes to 1925. Okay, so we've known that that's what price does. We can exploit that information. How can we get in? So we could just say, okay, we just want a sell below here. And this is what we've done at first. We just said sells below here off the hourly time frame until we go down to a lower time frame and have a look for the same thing, zones, clean traffic zones, all the way down. At the minute, we're happy to take an hour close below here. Okay, and that's what we've done. But let's go down to the lower time frames and see what we can see. So now that we've dropped down to the lower time frames, what we noticed is there was a 15-minute range. Okay, there was a 15-minute range here at 1929. So what we identified is when you got a break on the 15-minute like this to the low, price tends to tap at least 1927.96. So technically, if we got a break to the low here on the 15, we could look to get a pendant on after a pullback and then come down. This would be our take partial move to break even point driving down. But we know the hour tends to drive through anyway. But this whole move on the lower time frame would be the initiation of that drive to the downside. Okay. Now, what had happened then at this point, let me just go to the next candle. We did get a break to the downside, right? And we had a bottom wick. Everything was looking really nice for it. We then had a pullback, like so. And we got, as soon as we got a pullback to our area, we had a pending order on. So we did put a pending order of the low of this. Now, we didn't get activated straight away. Unfortunately, because we went off the low of this previous 15. Because what tends to happen is, if price wants to push back up, it shouldn't be breaking the wick of this. So what I've started to do is put my pendant just below the wick, just so you don't get activated and go straight into drawdown. And it's really helped with our trade and our win rate. So with the 15 pull back, we got our pendant on, but then the 15 closed bullish like so. Now it didn't break out of the 15 area, right? So we could have just kept it on, but what I didn't like, we were changing to we had another 15 minutes on the hourly candle, and I didn't like this 15. And what I was wary of is I didn't want I think it was a higher time frame candle pull down, activates, and flip to the upside. So I made the decision I personally cancelled this off, right? A few of our members kept it on because it still was a valid trade, but for me, when I take trades, everything has to be perfect for me. That's why I have such a high win rate, okay? Because I'm quite picky with my trade. It's like being a sniper in the army. Yeah, you get one shot, but if you miss that shot, it makes everybody else aware that there's a sniper about. Everyone just takes cover, and you never get that shot again. That's the way I look at trading. It's a good analogy to go off. When you are trading, you get one shot at it. One trade a day, one good trade a day, literally is all you need. And you only need like 10 pips a day. You really do. So don't think that just getting 10 pips a day is not good enough. It massively is. Okay. So I actually cancelled this pendant. But what happened with the next candle? Let's have a look. So we started making our way back down. And then we got this. So what we done is when we had this 15-minute close back down like this, I believe what we said is, okay, we'll take a 5-minute below, right? Our 5-minute was actually below this area here. Okay, so because the 15 it closed, I'll just go back one. because the 15 it closed bearish and starting to come back down, all I've done is just adjusted my plan, right? I just said, okay, let's go down to 5 minutes, let's see what happens, because I know when you get an hour break below there, you can drive straight through, right? So I adjusted the plan. I moved the area to here at 1929.40, and we just said, okay, let's take a 5 minute break to the downside here. We'll take that. But what happened is price closed where we at, respecting this area. So we didn't actually get in on it, because you could argue and say, well, it's closed respecting. And you look what happened with this candle. Price taps this area. Sorry, taps down here, wick, pulls back, closes respecting, bit like what this has done. And then the next candle just comes straight back up to here. Okay, so that's what we were sort of expecting with this, but what we done is wait for the next candle, and what happened is price shot straight through. So I personally actually missed this trade, but this would have been a fantastic trade, because remember, this is where our stops would have been, our sell stops would have been around here. So you'd be well in profit at this point. And a couple of our members did make some nice profit. You're looking at 15 pips at that point. Okay. So I've missed that trade. Yeah. No FOMO, nothing like that. This wasn't my trade to take. That's how you've got to look at trading. All we're doing then is adjusting our plan. How can we get in? How can we get more sells? So we know we're heavily bearish. Now, when we go off the higher time frame, we know the hourly, when you get a close below this area, let's get rid of this now, this area, 95 to 100% of the time, you get a close below here on the hour, you tap 1925. We know this. And now, having that close, these 15 minutes closing like this is our first indication price breaking out of this mess, and price is pushing down to that area, and we know price can really fly. Look at these clean traffic zones here coming straight through. So it was just a case of working out how do we get in now. And all we've done at this point is we just simply waited for the hour close. And that's all we've done. Now, the hour close, the hour zone was a bit higher up. Let me just identify this hour zone. So we noticed that we had an hour close. I think it was back below these levels. There. So we did notice an hour zone. Okay. Yeah, you've got little wicks to the area, wicks to the area, wicks to the area. So we did identify an hour zone in and around that area. Okay, and then we've basically now just had an hour breakout. So technically what should happen with this hour is price should open up. Let me just zoom in for you. Price should open up, pull back to where we would get our pending on. So price should pull back like that. Tap the previous support, which is this area, but also could tap this area. Right, but tap previous support. We then got our pending order on underneath the low. Okay. Our sell stop. Known that price should be coming down to 1925. So our target was actually down in these zones. Our target was here. Our stops were actually off the highs. Just the previous highs. So these were our stops up here. And that's what we were looking at. Okay. Now, what we needed to identify, now that we've got stops on, right, and the new candle's opened up, and I'll just pretend that this is the new candle's pulled back. This is exactly what happened. The new candle opened up and pulled back like so. Okay. Now, what we had to do is identify from here. Oh, let me get my box back on. That's what we're seeing. From this zone, on the way down, where is the first resistance, as in the first 5 minute resistance? As soon as we identify the first 5 minute resistance, that's where we have to take partial move to break even. So we do this on a 5 minute time frame. So this is where we needed to go down to the 5 minutes, which we did. We'll pretend this is the hourly candle. So where's the 5 minute zone? What we identified was there was a minor support in and around this area. So this was, oh, my bad. It was this one. This was going to be our take partial move to break even area. And what we found is when we were looking here, I think it was the 30 minute. The 30 minute identifies this perfectly, right? The 30s tend to tap this and even pull away. So if I mark this up now. Okay, let's see what the 30s do. When you get a 30 close, you can either tap it, retrace, or it goes straight through. So look, 30 close, taps this area, comes straight back up, or goes straight through. So we were happy this was our little support area on the 5, but also the 30 helped us out with this little zone. Okay, even these ones, 30 close, nice, straight through. So it was a nice zone to choose for our take partial. We're pretty confident that every time you get a close below there, you come to there really at least before driving down or retracing. So all what happened then at this point, we're happy with our take partial move to break even point. I'll delete this. Let's see what the next hourly candle done. Sorry, that's a 30, isn't it? There's the hourly. That's the next 30. There's the hour. Okay, so as you can see, the hour's pulled back and then flipped to the downside. We took partial move to break in. Well, I actually closed out in full at this point. Okay, because this was a sign where price, it was either going to drive straight through or it was going to tap, retrace back up to 29 and then come back down. But I couldn't be bothered being in all this drawdown. So I was just closing out full there for my trade. And that's exactly what I'd done. So we were sort of something like this. We got in here. Our target was 1925 and our stops were the high up here, so we were like that. Now if I show you on the 5 minutes as well, you can see price sort of goes straight through that zone, straight through. So it was a lovely trade, really nice trade. 12 pips at that point I closed out. Now the guys on TNS this morning, they actually entered, remember they entered up here. First trade, they got activated on here, bringing it all the way down. Now, going off the hour, what I mentioned, if I just get rid of this, go back to the hour. What did I say about the hour at the start of the call? When you get an hour close below here, you tend to tap 1925. And if you look what price done, straight through to 1925 at least. So basically, the whole thing is higher time frame bias. Find the zones. When price breaks below, where does it go? If price shoots through that area every time, then the odds are massively in your favour. It's just a case of waiting for that break to the low, waiting for your pullback, get your pendant on, flip to the downside, identify your take profit move to break even zones, do that just in case, and then wait for your target to get hit. Okay, so that was the trade we took today. So 2 trades on TNS. This first one will be what a few guys took, and then obviously this second one here coming all the way down to that range. Okay, and I'm going to show you them now on my MT4. Okay, so here is my trading view on my MT4. So you can see our sell stops. Yeah, you can actually see if I go identify this is a live account. It's one of my live accounts. If I go to the history and get up to days, we can see the original sell stops. The sell stops were at 1929.62, which is like perfect sell stops. Our original sell stops were actually 1929.62, round about there. So that was our original sell stops. Like I say, I took mine off just because of the 15-minute candle. Sometimes they play out. At least I'd rather it play out and I didn't get in than it doesn't play out and I am in. If that makes sense, because you'd be a lot more angrier. Okay, so that was our original sell stops. Like I say, I cancelled them ones. And then our next sell stop was 1932.35. Did I mark execute on this? Yeah, I must have just marked execute around that, but the sell stops were posted. So in around 1927.76. So around there. So that's where our second trade was, and you can see there I took $384 from that one. So not too bad really for a morning. One of our trades. The first trade would have been absolutely fantastic, but just a bit of transparency for you all to show that we do trade live for our members on our Discord most days from 8 o'clock UK time. If you're interested in learning how to trade how we do and you'd like to watch a couple of our sessions, hit the link below. I'll post the link for you. Get yourself on there. I'll be happy to trade with you. So that's it for me, guys. Thanks for watching. Take care.